We see squirrels pretty often whenever we go outside, but why don't we see them all the time? In this study, we wanted to explore how different factors can affect squirrel behavior, such as whether or not they want to come outside in the first place. For example, strong winds might make it difficult for squirrels, prompting them to stay home instead. Another possible factor could be topography, with squirrels possibly preferring hilly areas rather than flatter ones. We hypothesized that these two factors do in fact influence squirrel behavior, with stronger winds decreasing squirrel presence and one topography having a clear preference over the other. To test this hypothesis, we conducted an observational study on the Georgia Tech campus, where Cereus carolinensis, more commonly known as the eastern gray squirrel, is found. Students in the Ecology lab course were instructed to complete weekly observations throughout the semester. They were instructed to select a site along with the time and day of the week, and would return to it on a weekly basis. Before observation began, students would stay on the site for 5 minutes, allowing for the squirrels in the area to get used to their presence. When these 5 minutes are up, observation begins. For each observation session, students focus only on a single squirrel, termed the focal squirrel. They would then observe and record the activity of the squirrel every 20 seconds for 5 minutes. After each observation, students fill out a survey to record their data. These surveys ask for a picture of the observation, site coordinates, topography, cloud cover, wind conditions, precipitation, date and time, squirrel presence, and other organisms observed in proximity of the squirrel, and many other measurements. For this study, we only used data on topography, wind conditions, and squirrel presence. After the data was collected, it was then organized into a spreadsheet. Using the coding software R, we combined this spreadsheet from the current semester with those from previous semesters. R was then used to calculate and compare squirrel presence in different wind conditions and topographies. It was also used to graph this data. Here's the graph generated for the presence of squirrels in different wind conditions in flat topography. The code run in R determined that there was a significant association between squirrel count and wind condition. Here is the graph for hilly topography, and the same is also seen here. This meant that wind condition did affect the frequency of squirrel presence. Code was also run to compare the two topographies against each other, and no significant difference was found, which meant that the squirrels did not have a preference for one topography over the other. As shown by our data, squirrels appear to prefer light breezes, and are seen less frequently as winds become stronger. Another study found that stronger winds can impact smaller animals, such as hares and squirrels, by altering their ability to maintain their body heat. Now we have to think why squirrels would be less frequently observed under conditions of no wind. One study explored the impact of wind on birds, where strong winds decrease the responsiveness of birds. Without any wind, squirrels would have less defense against potential predators. Our data show that there was no difference between flat and hilly topography. A past study gives a possible explanation for this, as it explored the habitat use of squirrels in an urban environment. The study found that some factors such as topography, which would usually impact squirrel behavior in rural areas, have less of an effect on those living in urban environments. This study can help us better understand how the environment influences squirrel behavior, along with how changes that we make, such as construction projects, impact the species. This allows us to be more mindful of the species and gives rise to a more biodiverse urban environment. Listed here are the UN Sustainable Development Goals. 3 goals that were covered by the study are industry, innovation and infrastructure, sustainable cities and communities, and life on land.